Despite the river's temper, Julie Geyer reports on some North Jefferson City residents who early on refused to leave their homes.
A couple dozen families are living day to day on what is the only land above water here, now called Cedar City Island. The Missouri River continues to rise, but this place is still home to people like Gayla Russell, who is not willing to give up to Mother Nature just yet.
Why are you still staying? Well, it's home. I don't have anywhere else to go. I need to stay here and take care of my stuff. You know, like I say, we moved it out of my house, which is flooded. We put it up on the hill, and if it gets that high, that's all my belongings.
After we got out of the boat, Gayla showed us where she now lives, in a barn.
All my household stuff, we just put it in here and made the best.
This morning at the Disaster Operations Center, Mayor Louise Gardner said she is concerned about residents like Gayla who want to remain in Cedar City, but the mayor is not calling for an evacuation at this time.
I don't foresee that happening. Hopefully, those people who live there and who have gone through floods know when it's time to leave the area.
And that's why residents like Leonard Woodling will hold out as long as possible.
Leonard Woodling and his more than 80 rabbits have braved the floodwaters so far here on Cedar City Island. But if Leonard is forced to evacuate, these animals will have to stay behind.
We lost a few of them and saved a few, done the best we could.
Sometimes when you fight a river, your best won't matter. Leonard Woodling lives in a floodplain. The river created it. Before this flood was over, the river would take it back. Leonard was standing. The water would be over his head in less than 3 weeks. Why? The weather pattern was not changing.
Normally, the jet stream in the summer is located over Canada. Not this year. It stayed over Iowa and Wisconsin. As the Bermuda High sent its heat and humidity north, it interacted with the jet stream. That made rain, lots of it. In fact, 93 was the wettest summer on record for Columbia and Des Moines. Like any river, the Missouri is expected to reach bankfull about twice a year. In 1993, the river had already done that 3 times, once in April, May, and in June. Then came the storm July 6th. 5 to 8 inches of rain fell across central Missouri. Through the night, the river rose 4 feet, going over 30 feet for the first time this decade. And still, the weather pattern didn't change. 2 weeks later, on June 16th, the river surpassed its 51 record level by half a foot, 34.8 feet. This was now considered the 100-year flood. Still, the weather pattern did not change. After a brief respite, the waters started rising again. On the 27th, past its record set just 2 weeks before. And then on the morning of July 30th, the river went to an astonishing 38.6 feet, surpassing the flood of 51 by an incredible 4.5 feet. Dry weather had returned to the Midwest the week before. In fact, as the river crested, a drop of rain hadn't fallen mid-Missouri for a full week. The river started its slow descent, below its 51 record level 5 days later, down 10 feet by 10 days. And finally, after 50 days and 50 nights, below flood stage, August 20th. But let's go back to July 16th, when the river stood at 34.8 feet. Kermit Miller took to the skies that day for an aerial view of the flood.
If you have ever wondered exactly what the old-timers meant when they spoke of water bluff to bluff, this is it. From above, it almost looks like there is no flood, just one very wide river. There is so much water you cannot tell what things are supposed to look like. Suffice it to say that the channel should be bordered by the 2 rows of trees in the center of the screen. The rest of this water should not be here. Many farmhouses which were above water just 2 days ago are not any longer. The town of Hartsburg bears silent witness to a valiant but ultimately unsuccessful sandbagging effort. In Jefferson City last week, the island supporting the National Guard helicopter hangar looked like this. But with another 2 feet of water added to the river over the last 7 days, it has shrunk to this. The so-called Cedar City Island in the middle of a flooded North Jefferson City is now indistinguishable from the air. And downtown, the flooding along Wares Creek is even more dramatic from the air than from the ground. You get a good sense of just how vulnerable the Whitten Expressway is and how indispensable the High Street Viaduct is.
Meanwhile, on the ground, sandbagging operations to keep those 2 roadways open were underway. With several other east-west roads already closed in the downtown area, getting around became a challenge.
I didn't know that the flooding was quite as bad as it was, but it's really pretty bad. Is it tough to get around town? Yeah, right now I'm trying to get to the circuit clerk's office, so I'm going to keep driving around until I can finally find my way.
Frustrating best describes the traffic patterns in downtown Jefferson City these days, not only for drivers like Mark Christian, but for thousands of other motorists and emergency crews. Rising water has pushed Wares Creek back up again, threatening one of two ways into downtown. Sandbags are already holding back water from the 5063 expressway, but city officials say one good rain could put it under. This map shows the extent of road closures. Only High Street remains open to traffic in the downtown area. Other closed streets include West Dunklin and Missouri Boulevard, Ohio and Kansas streets, and both sides of Washington Park Drive. The city is offering free bus and shuttle service for those who have to work in the downtown area and asking everyone else to remain at home.
Ride our transit system. That's what this is an emergency situation where we don't normally provide free transit for the whole fixed route system as an inducement to try to get out of the car.
Roads all over mid-Missouri remain closed or are threatened tonight. The Highway Department was out sandbagging today at the 63 off-ramp at 54, trying to hold back the water.
Highway crews worked this morning to keep the Whitten Expressway, Route 50, open, dropping a sandbag line across the Missouri Boulevard intersection and pumping the water back over to the north side. If 50 goes under, High Street will be the only available east-west artery. And this morning, the water lapped uncomfortably close to the low end of the High Street viaduct.
And at what point do you decide whether or not it's necessary to sandbag the viaduct there on High Street?
I think we're still quite a ways from that.
Now virtually surrounded by water, the Capitol Plaza Hotel is open. Hotel officials are shuttling their guests from a makeshift parking area at Helias High School.
We've tripled our staff within the hotel, so once they're inside, they're going to be pampered to death.
The hotel's underground parking garage has been closed for nearly 2 weeks, but hotel officials were able to remove a couple dozen cars without damage during one period of low water. Just across the expressway, the Park Inn was also still receiving guests today.
We have just closed the restaurant after breakfast, but the hotel is open.
And the popular Zesto's Drive-In, now virtually cut off from the state government complex, is selling and delivering.
Yesterday was about half our regular amount. It's not good, but we're here.
As the river continued to rise, more levees broke, overflowing Area Creek. And with nowhere for the water to go, it forced its way into several city neighborhoods.
How much more we got to go?
The rising water came so quickly, residents living in this West Jefferson City neighborhood barely had time to save this boat. Several feet of water filled basements, destroying everything in sight. One woman with a broken leg sleeping in her basement woke up this morning in her bed surrounded by flood water. Some people evacuated their homes after thinking the flood was not a major threat to them.
You know, we just got everything up out of the basement and we thought the first floor would be safe. And I never dreamed it would get this high. I was going to move it all out yesterday, and everybody convinced me that it was okay and not to panic and leave it in there. So now I'm wishing I would have moved it yesterday.
People living in this Westside Jefferson City neighborhood knew the floodwaters were creeping up on them, but they had no idea they'd see this much damage. They said early this morning the water rose about 1.5 feet in less than an hour.
The Cole Junction levee was the last river barrier to break in Jefferson City, forcing water into Grays Creek, which flooded these homes. Area residents say the water is now like a yo-yo, going up and down, giving no warning of danger. In Jefferson City, Mark Slavitt, News Scene 13.
On the east side, backwaters from Boggs Creek caught residents of South Johnson almost completely by surprise.
I never even dreamed it'd be over in this area.
Homeowners needed big help here: bags, sand, trucks, and labor.
Been at it since 2 o'clock yesterday. And not much sleep.
2 layers bush, 2 bush wide.
Gotcha.
Then we put twice a bit.
Across town on Western Air Drive, it was a sandbagging clinic. A highly coordinated effort of some 30 volunteers produced a sandbag levee 5 feet high and 8 feet wide at the Abbott home in less than 4 hours.
We discovered at the last minute that what we had done needed to be redone. But we're going to win. We've got a vendetta against the river, and we're going to beat it this time.
And we're glad to report the wall held and no water made its way into the Abbott house. No water made it into the Capitol Plaza Hotel either, but after the battle to keep Highway 50 open was lost, management decided to shut down.
Well, we felt it was the safe thing to do at this stage right now. We don't know how high this is going to crest, and at this juncture right now, access to the hotel is unsafe.
The hotel reopened 11 days later after losing about $160,000 in business. Employees of the ABB company were also out of work for several days when the high water cut off access to the plant.